Welcome aboard the Ferry of Knowledge. My name is Luca, and I'll be your captain tonight. As we begin our journey, find a comfortable position, somewhere you can rest, and allow the day to slowly loosen its hold. In a moment, we'll set sail together, leaving behind noise, distraction, and the weight of the waking world. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth as the Ferry of Knowledge quietly departs. Before the Hydra ever touched the waters of Lerna, its purpose had already taken shape. The gods did not create creatures like this impulsively. Beings of such persistence required patience, planning, and a clear reason to exist. The Hydra was conceived during a time when strength alone had begun to distort balance, when victories arrived too easily and challenges no longer demanded thought. At the center of this concern stood Heracles. His path through the world left patterns behind it. Tasks meant to restrain him instead confirmed his momentum. Obstacles collapsed under force. Each trial resolved through endurance rather than adjustment. The world bent and continued bending without asking anything new of him. This imbalance drew attention. Hera observed quietly. Her influence rarely appeared through direct confrontation. She shaped outcomes indirectly, allowing situations to mature until resolution carried weight. Rather than opposing strength head-on, she preferred to surround it with conditions that exposed its limits. The response took form gradually. A creature would be placed rather than released. It would remain contained, shaping its surroundings instead of chasing attention. It would respond to harm by becoming more complex, forcing those who engaged with it to reconsider how effort was applied. The land mattered. Lerna already held instability. Its marshes resisted clarity. Water lingered without direction. Ground shifted under weight. The region existed on the edge of use, tolerating life without welcoming it. This made it suitable, a place where excess could settle without spilling outward. The Hydra was shaped to belong there. Its body grew long and heavy, capable of resting beneath water without strain. Multiple necks formed from a single mass, allowing awareness in all directions at once. Each head developed independently, sharing hunger, attention, and reaction without confusion. One feature defined it above all others. When injured, it grew. This was not excess, it was design. Each severed head produced two more, expanding the problem in direct response to attack. The creature transformed effort into escalation, ensuring that repeated force would deepen the challenge rather than resolve it. Hidden among these heads was another, heavier, older, enduring. This head anchored the Hydra's existence, carrying permanence beneath change. As long as it remained intact, the creature persisted, regardless of how its outer form shifted. The Hydra settled into Lerna without resistance. The marsh supported its weight. The water concealed its movement. The land adjusted slowly, widening its boundaries, deepening its pools, absorbing the creature's presence until environment and inhabitant shaped one another seamlessly. Time passed. The Hydra did not hunt widely. It did not chase notoriety. It remained where it had been placed, feeding steadily, growing accustomed to repetition and stillness. Its influence spread through absence, through paths avoided, settlements moved, and choices altered. By the time the world began to speak its name, the creature had already completed half its purpose. It waited, not for prey, but for approach, for the moment when strength would arrive expecting resolution, and discover instead a problem designed to endure until understanding followed. Only then would the Hydra fully enter its story. The place where the Hydra lived already felt unsettled. South of familiar roads and cultivated land stretched a region avoided through experience rather than superstition. The ground stayed soft beneath every step, soaked by stagnant water that never fully withdrew. Mist lingered low, even at midday, blurring distance and dulling sound. Footprints faded quickly, voices dissolved before traveling far. This was the marsh of Lerna. The terrain resisted passage. Pools appeared where firm earth was expected. Reeds grew thick enough to hide movement, yet too fragile to bear weight. Animals entered rarely, and those that did passed through briefly before retreating. People learned to keep their distance. Water drawn from the marsh was left untouched. Crops planted nearby withered. Livestock wandered too close and vanished. Over time, the marsh expanded almost imperceptibly, claiming ground season by season. Paths shifted. Familiar routes softened. What had once felt dependable gradually lost its certainty. The land absorbed presence. That quality made it suitable. Dangerous beings were rarely scattered at random. The gods favored locations already unstable, places where disruption could settle rather than spread. Certain regions became reservoirs for what ordinary life could not accommodate. Lerna became one of those regions. Long before the Hydra revealed itself, signs of its presence surfaced. Water stirred without surface cause. Heavy movement passed beneath the marsh, disturbing it without breaking through. At night, the mist thickened and sank lower, responding to something large and coiled beneath it. Curiosity never took hold. Silence allowed the marsh to deepen into itself. Whatever lived within remained undisturbed, feeding, growing, adjusting to the space prepared for it. The creature stayed where it had been placed. The marsh provided everything it required. By the time the Hydra fully occupied Lerna, the surrounding land had already slipped beyond human use. That was the first indication that the creature belonged there by design. The Hydra came into being through intention rather than chance. Its origin traced back to Hera, whose influence often took shape through endurance and consequence rather than spectacle. Her concerns rarely unfolded quickly. They settled, waited, and matured over time, shaping outcomes long after the initial cause faded from view. At the heart of her attention stood Heracles. His presence disrupted balance wherever he traveled. Strength followed him easily. Survival bent in his favor. Each trial intended to break him instead became another confirmation that force alone carried him forward. This troubled Hera, who valued order sustained over time rather than victories won through momentum. A response formed quietly. Rather than confronting Heracles directly, she sought a challenge that strength would struggle to resolve. Something that resisted simple solutions. Something that demanded patience, adaptation, and restraint. The creature would remain contained, waiting in place, shaping the land around it rather than roaming freely. For this purpose, the marsh of Lerna served perfectly. The Hydra was shaped to belong there. Its body grew long and heavy, suited for waterlogged ground. Multiple necks rose from a single mass, each capable of independent movement and attention. Heads formed with identical hunger and awareness, able to act without waiting for command. Beneath them, the body remained anchored, coiled and resilient, feeding steadily from the environment prepared for it. The most important aspect of the Hydra emerged from its design. Injury led to growth. When one head fell, two rose in its place. The creature adapted instantly, turning attack into expansion. This trait did not exist as spectacle, it existed as instruction. Violence applied thoughtlessly would only deepen the problem. Effort without strategy would multiply resistance. One head differed from the others. Buried among the living necks rested one that endured beyond the cycle of replacement. This head carried permanence. It anchored the creature's existence, ensuring that the Hydra could persist even as its form shifted repeatedly. The Hydra settled into Lerna easily. The marsh supported it. The water concealed movement. The ground softened beneath its weight. Over time, the creature and the land adjusted to one another, forming a stable relationship. The Hydra did not need to expand outward. Everything required for its survival lay within reach. Its presence carried a purpose beyond fear. The creature existed as a test shaped in advance, a problem placed patiently into the world, waiting for the moment when strength would meet its limits and strategy would be required to continue. That moment approached steadily. Word of the Hydra spread along nearby paths and settlements. People spoke of danger contained within the marsh, a threat best avoided rather than challenged. The creature remained undisturbed, coiled within its domain, growing accustomed to stillness and repetition. Eventually, the path toward Lerna would be walked deliberately, and when that happened, the Hydra would fulfill exactly the role it had been given. The Hydra did not announce its presence with spectacle. Its influence reached outward first, carried by consequence. Shepherds spoke of animals lost near the marsh. Travelers altered routes after glimpsing movement beneath the water's surface. The air around Lerna felt heavier, carrying a sharp scent that lingered long after people left its edge. Over time, the stories sharpened. Those who ventured too close described a vast shape rising from the reeds, necks lifting independently, eyes fixed without blinking. The creature moved with patience, conserving effort, waiting for proximity before reacting. When it struck, the motion came quickly, followed by retreat into cover. The marsh protected it instinctively. Water closed over disturbances. Reeds swallowed sound. Ground yielded under weight, slowing pursuit. The Hydra learned the space through repetition, adjusting its position slightly over time, never straying far from the deepest pools where footing failed most easily. Its intelligence emerged gradually. The Hydra learned where people hesitated. It sensed patterns in approach and withdrawal. When threatened, it shifted position instead of charging, letting the land exhaust those who tried to follow. Each encounter refined its awareness, turning the marsh into an extension of its body. The heads acted together without confusion. Each watched a different angle. Each reacted to movement independently, then fed information back into the whole. When danger approached from one side, the body adjusted accordingly, bringing additional heads into position with slow precision. Poison seeped into the air around it. Breath carried a corrosive force that burned skin and clouded senses. Water fouled near the creature's resting place, turning stagnant pools dangerous to drink from. The marsh grew increasingly hostile the longer the Hydra remained undisturbed. People stopped approaching altogether. Lerna became marked by avoidance. Paths shifted outward. Settlements relocated. The creature achieved exactly what it had been shaped to do: control territory through presence alone. Eventually, the stories reached someone accustomed to walking toward danger. Heracles listened carefully. The reports described a creature that multiplied when attacked, a presence rooted deeply into hostile terrain, a threat that endured beyond ordinary solutions. Strength alone would struggle here. Persistence without adjustment would fail. This made the Hydra different from previous challenges. It waited. The marsh remained still as Heracles approached its edge, carrying preparation along with him. The creature sensed the change immediately. Movement settled deeper beneath the water. Heads lifted slowly, tracking sound and vibration through reeds and mud. The test had arrived. The Hydra held its ground, coiled and aware, ready to respond to whatever stepped into Lerna next. Heracles entered the marsh with deliberate care. He moved slowly, testing each step before committing weight, learning the ground as he advanced. The air felt thicker here, carrying a sharpness that irritated the lungs. Water rippled ahead of him without visible cause. Reeds bent outward, parting just enough to suggest scale without revealing form. Then the Hydra rose. Multiple heads emerged first, lifting above the marsh in a slow, coordinated motion. Each neck arched independently, swaying slightly as eyes fixed on the intruder. The body followed only partially, remaining anchored in deeper water, where footing collapsed under pressure. The creature assessed distance, timing, and intent before acting. Heracles advanced. He struck quickly, relying on speed and power honed through earlier trials. One head fell beneath his blow, severed cleanly. The marsh reacted instantly. From the wounded neck, two new heads pushed forward, growing rapidly, fully formed and alert. The pattern repeated. Each strike removed a head. Each removal expanded the problem. The creature absorbed force and returned it multiplied, adjusting its position to keep its core protected. The marsh worked in its favor, slowing movement and draining momentum. Poison filled the space between them. Breath burned, skin stung. Water splashed upward, fouling weapons and footing alike. Heracles felt the cost of proximity increase with each exchange. Strength remained intact, but progress vanished. The Hydra pressed forward gradually. Heads snapped in alternating rhythms, forcing retreat rather than advance. One misstep sank a foot deep into the marsh, anchoring him briefly while heads closed distance. The creature understood reach. It understood restraint. It waited for imbalance. Heracles withdrew. This was not retreat born of fear. It was recognition. The approach he had relied upon before carried him only deeper into resistance. The Hydra responded to force with growth, turning effort into advantage. Observation replaced momentum. From firmer ground, Heracles watched the creature settle back into its coils. The heads remained elevated, tracking his position, ready to rise again if provoked. The central mass stayed submerged, protected, patient. One detail stood out. Among the shifting heads, one remained lower, heavier, slower to move. It never lunged first. It never overextended. It stayed close to the body, guarded instinctively by the others. Understanding formed. The Hydra could not be overcome through repetition. Each attempt strengthened it. A different approach would be required, one that altered the outcome of injury itself. Heracles turned away from the marsh, not defeated, but recalibrating. The Hydra watched him leave, unmoving. The land returned to stillness. The creature had fulfilled its design perfectly, meeting strength with expansion, and waiting to see whether intelligence would follow. Preparation changed the shape of the encounter. Heracles returned with intention refined by observation. Alongside him came Aeolus, younger in years and steadier in judgment. He carried torches wrapped tightly, their flames fed and guarded against damp air. Fire brought a different language into Lerna, one the marsh had never learned to answer. They advanced together. Heracles drew the Hydra's attention as before, stepping into range until the heads rose to meet him. Movement followed the familiar pattern. A strike fell. A head dropped. Growth surged at the wound. This time, flame followed immediately. Aeolus pressed fire to the severed neck. Heat sealed flesh and halted the surge at its source. The air filled with sharp smoke. The Hydra recoiled, heads pulling back in a ripple of reaction. The marsh responded unevenly to flame, water steaming where heat touched it, reeds curling away from sparks. The rhythm shifted. Strike, seal. Each cycle reduced the creature's options. Heads fell and failed to return. The Hydra adapted quickly, withdrawing farther into water, tightening its coil, guarding the lower neck more fiercely. Poison thickened the air, forcing careful distance. Still, the pattern held. Pressure mounted. The Hydra surged forward in a heavy wave, attempting to overwhelm through reach and mass. Heracles met the push directly, anchoring his footing on firmer ground prepared in advance. He forced the creature upward, exposing more of its body to light and flame. The guarded neck emerged, shorter, thicker, heavier. This was the anchor, the head bound to the creature's endurance. Heracles seized it, lifting with controlled force, drawing it clear of the marsh's support. The remaining heads lashed outward, but the pattern had broken. Fire and coordination had reduced their advantage. The final blow landed cleanly. The immortal head fell and ceased movement. Flame followed once more, sealing the base. With its anchor removed, the Hydra's body slackened. The remaining heads stilled. The marsh settled around the weight of what had been holding it for so long. Silence returned to Lerna. The air cleared gradually. Water slowed. Reeds straightened as steam dissipated. The creature's form lay partially submerged, its influence lifting from the land that had supported it. Heracles and Aeolus stood back. The solution had emerged through partnership, timing, and restraint. Force opened the problem. Fire resolved it. The marsh released what it had been holding. The Hydra's role had ended. What remained would carry forward, shaping events far beyond Lerna. The marsh did not return to itself all at once. After the Hydra fell, Lerna remained quiet for a long while, as though the land itself needed time to adjust to the absence of what had shaped it. Water settled slowly. The mist thinned day by day. Reeds stopped shifting without cause. Paths near the edge grew firmer beneath cautious steps. Yet traces endured. The Hydra's blood seeped into the ground where its body lay. It carried the same corrosive power as its breath, saturating earth and water alike. Pools darkened where it touched them. Plants nearby withered. The danger had changed form, concentrating into something smaller, sharper, and easier to overlook. Heracles understood the value of this residue. He dipped the tips of his arrows into the Hydra's blood, coating them carefully. What had once poisoned the marsh now traveled with him, carried deliberately rather than spreading unchecked. Each arrow became an extension of the creature's legacy, its power repurposed through intention. The decision carried weight. The Hydra had been shaped to resist force. Its defeat required cooperation and strategy. Its remains demanded restraint. Even in death, the creature punished carelessness and rewarded precision. The lesson continued beyond the marsh. News spread quickly. People returned to Lerna with caution rather than relief. The marsh remained marked, yet usable. Its threat no longer expanded outward. The land settled into something closer to stability, shaped by memory rather than fear. Among the gods, the outcome registered quietly. The creature had fulfilled its role. It tested strength and exposed its limits. It required adaptation to overcome. That knowledge carried forward, influencing future trials and shaping expectations placed upon those who walked similar paths. The Hydra did not vanish from the world. Its presence shifted into story and consequence. Its blood traveled with Heracles. Its reputation settled into warning. Its design continued to influence how challenges were understood. What had been contained within Lerna now moved outward, guided by choice rather than instinct. The marsh no longer held the creature. The world carried it instead. The defeat of the Hydra altered expectations. Until Lerna, success had followed a familiar shape. Strength confronted danger. Persistence wore resistance down. Victory arrived through endurance. The Hydra broke that pattern quietly and permanently. It revealed a different truth. Some problems deepen when pushed directly. Word of the encounter traveled with Heracles. People repeated the details carefully. The creature that multiplied under attack. The marsh that turned effort against the one applying it. The solution that emerged only when force paused long enough for thought to enter. These details mattered. They reshaped how challenges were approached. Caution gained value. Preparation gained respect. The idea of stepping back in order to move forward settled into shared understanding. The Hydra's influence extended far beyond its body. The poisoned arrows carried its presence into later encounters, changing outcomes that would otherwise have followed familiar paths. Each time one was used, the lesson of Lerna echoed quietly, that adaptation leaves marks long after the original problem is gone. Even the land reflected this shift. Lerna remained avoided, yet no longer feared in the same way. People understood its boundaries. They respected what had shaped it. The marsh became a place remembered for transformation rather than threat. The gods observed without intervention. The test had succeeded. Strength had reached its limit. Cooperation and restraint had completed what power alone could not. The balance held. The Hydra's story no longer belonged to the marsh. It belonged to the idea that victory changes meaning depending on how it is achieved. And that meaning continued to ripple outward, influencing choices long after the creature itself had settled into memory. The Hydra remained present long after its body sank into the marsh. Its name began to circulate in a new way, detached from place and shape. People used it to describe problems that grew when attacked carelessly. Situations where effort multiplied resistance. Conflicts that demanded patience instead of persistence. The creature became a reference point. When leaders faced unrest that escalated under pressure, they spoke of Lerna. When healers encountered ailments that worsened under rough treatment, they recalled the Hydra's blood. When travelers debated routes through dangerous terrain, they remembered how the marsh had turned strength against itself. The lesson endured because it applied broadly. The Hydra taught that some challenges require division rather than force. That cutting blindly creates more to contend with. That restraint, timing, and coordination matter as much as power. This understanding settled quietly into habit. People approached problems differently. They observed longer. They tested smaller responses. They watched for anchors hidden beneath surface threats, the source that sustained everything else. Even the gods acknowledged the shift. The Hydra had served its purpose without spectacle. It shaped behavior without conquest. It altered expectations without leaving ruins behind. Its influence spread through thought rather than fear. The creature no longer needed a body. It existed wherever repetition replaced strategy, wherever escalation followed intervention. Its presence lived on in caution, in planning, in the pause before action. Lerna returned to stillness. The marsh held its shape. The mist thinned. Water flowed with clearer boundaries. The land remembered what it had supported, then released it. And so the Hydra passed fully into story, not as a beast to be slain again, but as a reminder carried forward, quietly influencing how people chose to confront what resisted them. The Hydra endured because it was never only a creature. It existed as a situation shaped into flesh, a problem designed to respond, adapt, and persist. Its body expressed an idea the world needed to encounter directly. Some threats expand under pressure. Some dangers reward force with complexity. Some challenges resist resolution until their source is understood. That understanding took form at Lerna. The Hydra showed that growth can be defensive, that multiplication can be a response to harm rather than a sign of strength. Its many heads reflected a single truth repeated too often. Addressing symptoms without addressing cause leads only to escalation. The gods allowed this lesson to settle slowly. They placed the creature where it could remain contained. They shaped it with intention. They allowed it to persist until intelligence caught up with power. When the balance shifted, the creature receded without spectacle. This was enough. The Hydra did not require worship. It did not demand remembrance through fear. Its survival depended on relevance. As long as problems grew when mishandled, the Hydra remained present. As long as force tempted people to act without understanding, its story retained value. It lived on wherever patience succeeded where effort failed. The marsh of Lerna quieted. Water reclaimed its rhythm. Reeds straightened. The land resumed its slow negotiation with those who approached it carefully. What remained was memory, not of danger, but of adaptation. The Hydra's final gift was perspective, a reminder that strength reaches further when guided, that restraint shapes outcomes more cleanly than repetition, and that some victories arrive only when the impulse to strike gives way to the decision to understand. As the story settles, it carries that lesson gently forward, resting where reflection replaces urgency. And with that, the creature returns fully to stillness. As the story settles, the ancient world grows quiet once more. The places remain, even as the moment passes. Stone holds its shape. Paths rest where they have always been, worn smooth by time rather than memory. In Greek mythology, stories do not vanish when they end. They linger, not as events, but as presence. A mountain remains long after the footsteps have faded. The sea continues its slow movement, indifferent to names and outcomes alike. You can imagine the land at rest now. The palace stands silent beneath the sky. Columns catch the last light of the day before shadow returns. Courtyards empty, and the warmth stored in stone releases itself slowly into the evening air. Somewhere nearby, the sea breathes against the shore. Waves arrive without effort, then withdraw again, leaving the surface of the water smooth and dark. The horizon softens, and the line between sky and sea becomes less distinct. Time moves differently here. There is no need to follow it, no need to mark where one moment ends and another begins. The ancient world continues in its own rhythm, steady and unhurried. In these stories, gods once walked among mortals, Heroes crossed land and sea. Monsters rose and fell. And yet, what remains most constant is the stillness that follows. You might imagine a path now, not one that leads anywhere in particular, but one that simply exists. It curves gently through open land, bordered by stone and earth, familiar and unchanged. There is nothing required of you along this path, no destination to reach, no choice to make. The path continues whether you follow it or not. Above, the sky deepens. Stars appear one by one, distant and steady, placed gently into the dark. They remain unmoving, watching over land and sea alike, as they have for countless nights before this one. The world feels wide here and calm. Stories return to the places that shaped them. The sea keeps its secrets. The land holds its silence. And as everything settles back into its natural balance, there is nothing more for the story to do. It has found its place. And somewhere, beyond the edge of the land and the darkening sea, the Ferry of Knowledge continues its quiet passage, its lantern dimmed, its wake smoothing behind it, carrying stories